So today what we are going to talk about is atypical profiles, so specifically looking at how you guys can start recruiting in a more inclusive way if you haven't already, and if you are already then maybe gives you some pointers to think about developing that even further. My name is Becca, I'm Global Account Manager for AssessFirst. You will meet Emmerich later, who's just there. He's our research psychologist, and he comes with a fantastic French accent. AssessFirst, I don't know how many of you know who we are or what we do. If you have a look at the bags that you've been given, you will see on one side there's a unicorn. On the other side, it says recruit personalities, not CVs. And that is our tagline. And that's ultimately what we do. We're real believers in looking at recruiting individuals outside of their CVs, outside of their previous education, outside of their previous life journey. And we have created a solution whereby we are able to tell you how successful somebody will be within a specific role, company culture, team, and look at doing that in a more diverse way and considering those sort of people that you wouldn't necessarily look at focusing your recruitment efforts upon. So today we are going to run through, I'll start by running through a survey that we conducted last year, which focuses really upon people's opinions, both recruiters and candidates, on the current situation when it comes to diversity. Emmerich will then cover off the topic of different types of diversity that exist, and importantly so, their impact upon industries and you guys also as recruiters. And then I will jump in and give you a little bit of insight as to where you can start, or if you've already got some ideas or projects on the go for this year when it comes to diversity and inclusion, where you can possibly develop that further, considering what we offer at AssessFirst. Okay? Brilliant. So, first off, looking at the survey that we conducted last year, so between the months of September and October, we questioned, I guess you could say, 3,419 individuals, both recruiters and candidates. Like I said, from the perspective of recruiters and candidates, what we found overall, and kind of the biggest figure that really shocked us, didn't really shake us actually, because, I don't know, I'll get your opinion now as to whether you agree with this or whether you think that this is the case. 96% of those asked thought diversity is important for company success. What do you make of that? I think that's pretty clear. I think we're pretty much all in agreement that that's what the opinion is today. What's even more interesting is 50% of those asked thought that it was crucial for team development and companies to grow. So obviously it's a talking point. It needs to be a focus. The first question that we asked, what issues do you face when recruiting? So you can see here, salary expectations, communications with managers, low budget, questionable candidate experience. Those were the four major ones. Salary expectations being the highest there, so just under a third of those said that was the major issue. Candidates coming to you, there being a gap between what they expected versus what you could give them as a company. I'm not sure how that stands and what you make of these figures here, but overall, though, the most drastic opinion was lack of candidates. 60% of those asked said that was, their biggest problem. Any nodding heads? Do you probably relate to that? Which obviously is there's something we can certainly do about that. If we turn that on its head, though, 61% said that they never recruited atypical profiles. So that, for me, screams opportunity, because if you're saying that 60% 60% of those said that candidates, they weren't getting enough candidates, but already 61% say that we don't consider individuals outside of the kind of normal expectation that maybe has existed within a company for years and years and years, then that screams an opportunity where we can change those figures, open up the pool of candidates and see more candidates coming through. Another question we pose, so for you, what is an atypical profile? This is very, very interesting because you can see the numbers in white here are the recruiters versus the grey numbers, which are the candidates. So it's interesting to see the difference between the candidate and the recruiter's perspective. You can see various experience of reorientation, so career changes comes up the most. So that's their opinion of an atypical profile. Career breaks, 43%. Unusual school background, 42%, and 38% the idea that people, go with their hearts when choosing a career. What's kind of more interesting is typically when you think about diversity, the sort of first things that come up in people's minds, things like sexual orientation, gender, ethnicity, age, disability. And actually when we pose that question, this was the scoring for these aspects here. So it actually shows that more people thought that the atypical profile definition actually sits within these aspects here. So again, that's something that we can really kind of improve by opening up our view on what that typical profile is based upon previous experience, schooling, and everything else. Another question we pose, so what makes it difficult in your context to recruit atypical profiles? This again is quite interesting. Communication with managers being the highest there, so the idea that maybe, and I'm sure you have all witnessed situations like this, maybe the managers aren't necessarily on board with broadening their view. So you're going in, you're saying, okay, why don't we maybe consider the type of profile, open that up a little bit. But then, 32% of cases they are saying, well, actually, I tried, but the managers kind of potentially put a stop to that. Have you already implemented solutions to recruit, to diversify the profiles you recruit? This again is interesting. So 45% said it's not even planned or not at all. 35% are doing it. So we need to delve in deeper to understand what they're actually doing at this moment in time. Do you have a budget dedicated to recruit more atypical profiles? 88% said no. And again, I'm kind of, we're releasing a white paper on this, so you'll be able to see it online and we can send it through to you all. But I'm just kind of showing these results so you can kind of start thinking about maybe where you guys are at personally within your companies and versus this. What actions do you have or would you like to take? Specialised events around diversity inclusion and looking again at opening up your search. Partnerships, soft skills based recruitment. Candidates, from a candidate's perspective, do you feel that the atypical aspect of your profile has influenced your career? 34% said yes. And this is what they found was the reasons to how and why their career was ultimately influenced. So finding a suitable job, 50% said that was, in theory, more difficult. Interview process, or getting to the interview process, 40%. Desirability of my profile to you guys. Career progression was affected. And then application feedback. So again, it's really interesting to see what the candidates actually think off of the receiving end, because it's often the case that we don't necessarily ask. Again, from the candidate's perspective, do you feel that companies avoid recruiting atypical profiles? This is interesting, 64% said yes. And the reasons there. Fear of recruitment error, over half. Company culture that is already in existence. Tendency to clone. So again, maybe have a think about what your company is doing at the moment and if it fits into any of these. And then again, from the candidate's perspective, when considering these barriers, it's up to the company to break them down or for you to get around. And that sat at 50-50. So either it's half thought it was the company's responsibility, the other half said that they had to adapt. Now I'm going to leave you with those. Have a little think. Hopefully that's prompted some questions or given you an opportunity to really think about what you've got at the moment in terms of processes and where you could possibly move forward. Like I said, this will be available. We'll send it all out to you with all of the detail. Now I'm going to pass you over to Emmerich, who will talk about the different types of diversity from a psychological point of view.
So hello everybody, my name is Emmerich. You can judge me by the accent, I'm French, so it's cool. As Becca said, we noticed that almost 96% of recruiters think that diversity is important for their company's success. It is therefore extremely important to understand how diversity is going to impact on your business and to understand which difference make a difference. So more precisely, which difference in terms of diversity is going to make a difference on performance. So, first of all, what you need to know is that we're going to distinguish between three main types of diversity. The first one is called surface level diversity or visible diversity. It corresponds to all the things, all the factors that are immediately observable, all the factors that cannot be changed and which are the easiest to measure. So different observers can easily identify these factors. So it is therefore factors like people's gender, age, ethnicity, or physical disabilities. The second level of diversity is called medium or knowledge diversity. It's a slightly more complicated level of identification because it is information you will be able to find on, for example, on a person's resume. So, for example, the school or company they attended and their technical skills. And the third and last level of diversity is called deep level diversity or invisible diversity. So it's factors that cannot be assessed with a naked eye. So it's a more psychological diversity, and it corresponds to factors such as personalities, motivation, reasoning skills, or cognitive styles. And when we look deeper at each of these factors, at each of these levels of diversity, we notice that there is a big problem. Because when we look at the recurrence of each type of diversity, so by recurrence I mean the importance given to each diversity, we realize that surface level diversity is the more recurrent, followed by mid diversity, and finally deep level diversity. Today, take a stranger in the street, ask him what the diversity is for him, and there is a lot of chance that he will quote them in the same order. However, and in fact, it's totally normal, because like I say, surface level diversity is immediately observable. Where there is a problem, however, is when you compare this recurrence to the impact of each diversity on effectiveness. We observe a completely reverse trend. So surface level diversity will have a low impact on performance, medium diversity will have a medium impact, and deep level factors will have a huge impact on performance and effectiveness. So it is therefore extremely important to make a real focus on deep level factor and understand how our personalities and cognitive styles will help you build effective team. So to do that, I'm going to tell you about a study that was conducted in the 60s by Richard Hoffman at the University of Michigan, and that has been replicated many times since. So what did Hoffman do? He studies two types of teams. So homogeneous team, where people had similar personalities, and non-homogeneous team, where collaborators had different personalities. He gave each team two tasks to complete. The first task that was oriented, it was a problem-solving exercise, and the second exercise was a conflict resolution role play. And he also assessed two types of efficiency indicators. So indicators that were related to productivity. So for example, the quality of work, the quantity of work, the number of innovative ideas, and the speed of the execution to resolve the problem, and also indicators that was related to social performance. So was the cohesion in the team good, and were all the members satisfied to work with that team. And the difference of result between homogeneous and non-homogeneous teams are quite obvious. Because in non-homogeneous team, work quality was on average rated 42% higher. They also proposed 42% higher work quantity. The number of innovative ideas was 88% higher. And the speed of execution to resolve the problem was 113% faster. So we ended up with boosted productivity on these factors, but there is also a gap between this impact on productivity and the one that Hoffman found on team satisfaction, because he realized that in non-homogeneous team, on average, they rated their satisfaction 15% lower. So a big gap between these two types of indicators. Before answering the question how to control this impact on satisfaction, is this effect a normal result? And the answer is yes. In psychology, we're talking about the principle of similarity. Overall, we are all attracted by what is similar to us. Similarity is a real social magnet that can create all kinds of relationships. For example, people marry others that looks like them. They tend to join groups that share the same hobbies. They join companies that share the same value. So by being close to people that are similar to us, it gives us the feeling that our belief, our values, and our behaviors are the right one. And on the contrary, when we dislike someone that is similar to us, it will put us in a state of personal and psychological discomfort. That's why we all have a tendency to seek for similarity and homogeneity, and that's why people on homogeneous team will report higher level of satisfaction. The problem is that it's a completely biased conception of reality. Take this team, for example. Let's say, for the example, that they know each other very well and they have been working together for a long time. The day you want to integrate a new collaborator, let's say, for example, Sami, you will face two types of situations. First situation, Sami has a similar profile in terms of personality and cognitive styles. In this case, when we ask the other collaborator what do they think about their effectiveness, they will perceive their performance as being higher since Sami's arrival. But in reality, when we measure this performance objectively, we will notice that the performance of the group with Sami is way lower. And the second situation, if Sami has a complementary and different profile in terms of personality, the group will rate their perceived performance as being lower with Sami, while in reality the performance will be way higher. So, you're going to tell me that it's quite difficult because we're talking about psychological and unconscious human mechanism. But today it is possible to build an intelligent approach to personality, and by intelligent I mean a diversity that maximizing the gain in productivity while also maximizing the gain in satisfaction. And for that you will have to build two types of compatibility between people. The first type of compatibility is a compatibility of values. Our personalities at work can be different, we will see that just after. But if you want to build a high cohesive team, you will have to, if you want to build a high cohesive team, you will have to focus on the motivation that people share in common. As I told earlier, we all have a tendency to seek for similarity, and working with people that share the same values as ours will be extremely beneficial. For example, if you try to associate two people that are similar personalities and similar motivation, they will get along very well. It will be extremely natural for them to work together, but their effectiveness of their collaboration will not be really effective. On the contrary, if you try to associate two collaborators that have complementary behavior and complementary motivation, it will be extremely difficult for them to work together, and the collaboration will not last for very long. So what is going to be interesting is to associate people that have complementary behaviors, different personality, but find some anchor points in terms of the motivation they share. For example, just a personal example at AssessFirst. I work a lot with this guy, who is an account executive, and as you can see, we have different personality, meaning that on a daily basis we're going to behave differently. But we have almost the same aspiration, the same motivation, and we are set into motion by the same drivers. And in fact, today is surely one of the people with whom I work the best at AssessFirst, because we managed to transform this difference in terms of personality into complementarity. The second type of compatibility you will have to build is called role compatibility. So, as we saw in regard to personality, a certain community or similarity can help us work with people, but in some cases it can also be beneficial to work with people that have different behavioral habits. So for example, it would be beneficial for someone who doesn't have a strong leadership and who doesn't want to take the lead into the relationship, to work with someone that naturally has a more assertive leadership. But to do that, you have to know what type of personality are complementary and will lead to a gain in productivity. In the study we conducted at AssessFirst, we found 8 roles or skills that was complementary to each other. They are either oriented toward the task, so you will find people that want to make the project move forward, or either oriented toward relations, so with people who want to interact and create relationship with others. So these roles are the following. So for example, the doer, who is someone that will work with precision and strives for accuracy. The innovator, so people that will easily bring innovative and new ideas. The analyst, that easily manage complexity. The challenger, so typically salespeople that strive for greatness and take initiative. The leader, so that sets the direction for the team. The team player that care to collect the opinion of each one on the team. The connector that will easily connect with other team, make business with other team. And the regulator that easily manages stress for him and in others. And what we found in our study is that the absence on one of these roles in your team will be extremely damaging. And to build an effective team, all these roles have to be present in different proportions depending on the task the team has to complete. So today, if you want to build a team that is effective thanks to diversity, and if you want to get all the benefits from diversity, you will have to build a team that is oriented toward all of these roles and identify for each person what skill she can bring, what she can do, how she will do it, and also study the balance at the collective level to see if the team is well balancing toward these goals. But to do that, you need to have the right tool, and I will hand over to Becca that will talk to you more about how to start with this.
To reaffirm what Emmerich was saying about the importance of, when considering diversity, the importance of looking at personality, where to even start? Well, you're lucky because that's what we do. So at AssessFirst, like I mentioned, we've created a solution that looks at predictive recruitment. And when we talk about predictive, it's ultimately identifying the level of potential success of somebody based upon their personality, so who they are. Not necessarily saying forget a CV, but it's looking outside of a CV, it's looking outside of those previous experiences that they have had. So we can identify out of all of those candidates who apply for a specific role, who will be the most successful and, importantly, the most happy within the role that you have to offer them. So our aim is to help our clients establish those individuals in this upper top quartile. So when looking at this, their level of happiness, level of engagement, the more happy that somebody is, inevitably they're going to be performing above and beyond the expectation. And these two aspects here, there's a huge correlation between other KPIs that are measured, such as turnover, such as general engagement levels. How do we do that? So we're a little bit different in that we focus upon potential of individuals, and we feel that it's absolutely crucial to identify three aspects of an individual, assess three aspects of an individual to really see what their potential is within your company or the company culture that you have. Just starting with personality on the right-hand side here, as Emmerich mentioned, really, really important when it comes to diversity, especially when looking at effectiveness of teams and improving effectiveness of teams, and often it's not the most focused upon. So we look at and analyse how candidates behave in certain situations, including stressful situations. But in addition to that, we don't stop there. We also assess motivation, so drivers of individuals, and reasoning. So motivations, we look at what candidates want to do on a day-to-day basis, in what kind of environment, and we can match that to what you have to offer in the roles. And then finally, reasoning. So it's not an IQ test, because we do focus just on those soft skills and establishing who a candidate is. But that looks at their level of mental agility, so the way in which they process information, at what extent, at what speed, and that information is really important to establish how a candidate ultimately can grow and develop with your company, become an ambassador, and not, in 6 months say, actually, I don't really fancy this, so I'll leave. So what we've created, what we've developed is 3 assessments, taking approximately 10 minutes each, that our clients have their candidates take. And from those results, we are able to establish candidates' natural talents. So aside from their CV, what do they have to offer to your business that's intrinsic, that they find comes naturally to them? And because of that, in theory, they'll be happier and perform at a higher level on the day-to-day job. Now, what's really nifty is we can compare those natural talents, so those pure results, to a predictive model. And this is where it gets really interesting, because that predictive model is ultimately what good looks like within your business. So what are you looking for? Now, maybe you already know what you're looking for through an existing competency framework. We can use artificial intelligence to define what you're looking for, define your company culture. I'm not going to go into that today, but ultimately we can make that comparison and tell you how well somebody will be within your company culture, within a specific role, even ahead of seeing them at interview. So in theory, you could anticipate, those leavers who may well leave 3 months, 6 months down the line. We can tell you how they will do within the job, so associated with specific tasks and missions that they will be assigned within a team. So again, touching upon Emmerich's point, the idea that we don't work alone, we all work within a team, and to really ensure you can make the most of diversity when it comes to personality and really make sure that a team works collaboratively together and become a high-performing team. And then, as I mentioned before, we can tell you how they will fit within your specific company culture. Because at the end of the day, okay, maybe today you're looking at previous experience, and quite rightly so, because what else have you got to look at? You know, it's a good starter. But just because they've worked possibly in a competitor, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will work well within your company culture. Every company culture is different, and equally, it doesn't necessarily mean that they were any good at that previous role. We focus on the candidate experience, as we mentioned before in the survey. Candidate experience was something that came up or popped up as a problem or an area of improvement. We've got a really fun, engaging candidate experience, and we feel that it's really important for every candidate who spends, you know, up to 30 minutes taking our assessment, that they get something back from it. And so they actually receive a high-level report that they will receive, whether they're successful or not with your business. And there's the opportunity there to highlight and showcase their reports on LinkedIn and on social media. Now, from the recruiter experience, which obviously is possibly the most important from your perspective, this is an example of one of the functionalities, and again, I'm not going to go into everything, but this is really highlighting that comparison that we can make between the candidate's pure results and the predictive model that you will have created in whichever way you wish to, using AI or competency framework. You can see that we provide global scoring, so the 81, 73, 69 is showing us all of those candidates who have applied, taken the personality, motivation, mental agility assessment, and compared it to the competencies that you have defined as crucial to success for a role within your business. So again, you can use this alongside a CV, but in theory it will define somebody's potential, which is another really important factor to consider alongside what, you know, grades they got at A-level or whatever. This is a little bit of detail as to what we can provide in terms of the information and data behind those global scorings. So you see, we can tell you more about their performance potential, their commitment potential, so focusing really in on their motivations. Does what they want to do on a day-to-day basis match with what you have to offer? And what's really interesting here is what we call a personal radar, and this is ultimately a predictive model overlaid with a candidate's pure results. So you can really see ultimately where the gaps are, and you know, you can potentially use that when going into your final interviews and asking questions around those gaps. And there's a couple of other shots here as well on the factors that we assess, so motivations there. Now, I'm sure you're going to think, hang on a second, if we're using this idea of comparing, you know, to a predictive model, you've assigned what you're looking for, you're comparing every candidate who comes through against that, aren't you going to be recruiting the same individual? And it's you know, completely a fair question, and actually goes against this whole idea of diversity. So that's a question that we have been asked several times. So we have created or conducted a study whereby we've taken a sample size of, I think, approximately 6 individuals who have all scored the same global scoring on that comparison between their pure results and the same predictive model. So what we can show you is those 6 here. This is what their personal radars look like. And I don't know if at the back you can see that, but you can see the greens and the reds for all of those 6 individuals. They are the same. We've used the same predictive model, the same basis of comparison. However, you can see that their actual scoring, so the kind of grey spiderweb, for each individual is completely different. So despite the fact that they've all scored the same 70 out of 100, actually, their personality is very, very different. Okay? Then, when we consider each individual's major, whatever they've studied at uni, well, you've got business psychologist, philosopher, finance, ecology, international trade, fashion design, they're all completely different. So again, hopefully that kind of makes you think of posing the question, hang on a second, we're all looking at finance or business graduates, maybe we should start looking at opening the pool. And then actually it'll make your lives a lot easier because you'll get more candidates in theory coming to you. Again, this is looking at all of the different aspects here and where they sit as a team. So that looks at their work ethic here. Their emotional management, you can see they're kind of spread all over the place at different levels of intensity. Social approach. There's only, there's 2 individuals in 2 of those boxes. Collaboration, so management style there. Capacity for feedback. So hopefully you're getting the idea that they are all actually different. So the idea of cloning is kind of null and void. Now just one last section, because actually I'm also conscious of time. What we've done is we've provided or created our diversity rate. So what we've done is our science team, Eric and his guys, I don't really actually understand how we did it, but what we've done is we've created a diversity rate. So in theory, 100%, if you're scoring 100%, it means that you are 100% diverse, i.e. there's no similarities between individuals. Here you can see that each of those 6 we've calculated looking at just their shape assessment here, so just their personality assessment, and then on the bottom line there, both their shape, drive and brain, so their shape, personality and mental agility assessment. You can see here that we have created a diversity rate that looks at how those individuals compare to one another. And actually, you can see on average here, team, if you take into consideration all 3 of the assessments, their results, and how they compare against each other, they've got a diversity rate of 79.7%. So let's say 80%, meaning that only 20% of their traits are actually the same amongst the team, meaning that in 80% of their traits are different. I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. I guess it's question time.